Hare Krishna. Hare. Thank you very much for coming today. And based on the Ramayana, I'll be talking about a very unpleasant topic. The topic itself is not unpleasant, but it's an important topic. It's about understanding when relationships turn toxic. We are all relational beings. Now, no person is an island. We need to connect with each other. And relationships can be both the source of the greatest joy and the greatest pain. So I was taking a series on the Ramayana where I talked about the four brothers Ram, Lakshmana, Bharat, Shatrughan, and talked about three brothers, the two brothers Vali and Sugriv, and then today I talk about three brothers Ravan, Vibhishan, and Kumbhakarna. So now, generally, everything that we do, we are constantly evaluating, whether it is consciously, analytically evaluating, or just by a gut feeling. Say, right now you have come for this program. A part of your mind may be evaluating. Did I do the right thing by coming here? Was it a good investment of my time? Maybe I had so many other things to do. So that's natural. And evaluation is also a sign of intelligence. We all have finite amount of time. We have finite amount of energy. So there is always evaluation going on. So evaluation, it's constant, but it is not conscious. Hmm? So when say we are at a party or a corporate get together or a social get together, we're meeting someone. While we're talking with that person, even at that time we are thinking, how much time should I spend with this person? Do I want to get to know this person more? Or do I just want to have a call, just a formal meet and greet and move on? So we constantly evaluate. So evaluation itself is necessary, primarily because it is desirable, primarily because that our time is finite, our energy is finite. We ourselves, our very existence, in the sense of our, we may be souls who are eternal, but the scope over which we exist, our influence is finite. So now the evaluation can be simply emotional, or it can be, I won't just say rational, that's another extreme, but it can also be in between if you consider holistic, where it considers both. So emotional means I just don't like you, or I like you. That's the only basis for deciding how we relate with someone. I was once doing a mediation between two people, and the first person said to the second person, I know I can see that you are very angry with me. Can you tell me what have I done to make you so angry? And the other person replied, you exist. Now, if somebody has that attitude, there is no chance for reconciliation. And the other person was not saying this in a sarcastic or dismissive way. He said, I just don't know. Just the sound of your voice, the cackle of your laughter, the way you walk, everything you do seems to trigger dislike within me. And there is what the Bhagavad Gita calls as raga and dvesha. That there are some people for whom we just naturally feel some attraction or attachment. And there are some people for whom we naturally feel some distaste or disdain or dislike. So, when it is unconscious, when our evaluation is unconscious, it is directed primarily based on our likes and dislikes, raga and dvesha. Now, we all have our likes and dislikes, and we can't avoid them. But But Krishna in the Bhagavad Gita says, Tayor navashamagachet. Don't let these control you. Indriyasyasyarthe ragadvesham vyavastito. They're naturally situated in the senses and the sense objects. There will be natural attachment and attraction that will be there. So attachment and aversion that will be there. But don't tayor navashamagachet. Krishna is saying that we can't just wish it away. That's just the way we are. But don't be controlled by it. Don't let it control you completely. So when these likes and dislikes are unconscious, then what may happen is that relationships, if our evaluation is based only on this, then relationships can become very unstable. They can become very volatile. Mm. Especially in the Western world, an increasingly westernized world. Nowadays, people are driven a lot by emotions. I have written a book on the soul and reincarnation called Demystifying Reincarnation. So, whenever I speak on this topic of reincarnation, one of the first questions that people ask me in the Western world is, do we have a soulmate? So, is there someone, some partner just met on us? So, do we have a soulmate? So I answer in different ways depending on the context. But generally, one answer I give is, first understand the soul, then later think about the mate. No, that is not just in the humorous sense. It's that focus on understanding ourselves better. It's without understanding ourselves, we just searching for someone. That's not really going to work. But another point over here is that yes, it is possible that there are some people with whom we may feel a sudden and strong attraction. So, can there be love at first sight? See, well, all the romance movies and romantic novels are all about that. But the test of love is not whether there is not so much whether there is love at first sight, whether there is love after many sights. That is the important thing. So, love is enduring, and that's why if we are going to evaluate a relationship, the point I'm making is if you are evaluating a relationship only based on emotions, then no relationship can be stable. Because in any relationship, sometimes we may feel good when we are the other person, sometimes we may not feel good. And our emotions are fickle. Fickle means just keep changing. One day, somebody may say, a young couple may say that, I love you. They say, I love you. I can't live without you. And the next day they have some conflict and say, I hate you, I can't live with you. It just is huge dualities. So now emotions definitely need to be considered. But when we want to consider whether a relationship is healthy, broadly there are two criteria. That if there is a healthy relationship, the result is that we come closer and we become better. Now, come closer. What does this mean? I'll explain that. So, normally, say, if the two people and they're trying to have a relationship, the result would be the ideal situation is both of them come closer to each other and both of them have risen upwards. That means in relating with you, I become a better person. In relating with me, you become a better person. And then we come closer to each other. So, this coming closer to each other is when we say they're closer, that this is not always a pleasant process. Why? Because if in a relationship we are to become better, we need to change. And sometimes changing means acknowledging that there are some shortcomings within me. And those shortcomings need to be overcome. So that can be a difficult process. And it is when we say we come closer, it doesn't just mean when we see someone how tightly we hug that person. It actually means how much we can trust that person. When we say closer to someone, what that means is that we can say that there's a strong relationship or a close relationship. So what that means is that even if some strong words are spoken, the relationship can survive. Still, the relationship survives. Why? Because there is basic trust in the relationship. That this person is not my enemy. This person is my well-wisher. So even if they're telling something which is a little difficult for me to swallow. Now, of course, it is a responsibility of the other person also to not tell it in a especially painful way. We try to be sensitive and warm and kind. But that has to be done at times. That's how we learn. So, so basically, when Krishna talks about sattvic happiness, 1837, he says, many times this is like poison in the beginning, but nectar in the end. Yatadagre vishamiva pariname amritopam. So, serious relationships, there will be friction. But after the friction, then there is a greater trust. It's a greater understanding. It doesn't mean that, see, initially what happens in relationships, we romanticize or even idolize a person. That means, oh, this is my dream partner, or this is the perfect, whatever it is, this perfect relationship, perfect job. And then from there, if you go and demonize the other person, that, such person doesn't do this right and doesn't do this right and doesn't do that right and doesn't do the right. And after some time, we learn to humanize the person. Human being means that we all have faults, we all have limitations, but we all have a good side and a bad side. So, so in one sense, you could say in this initial phase, there is there may be some pleasure. If there is what romance movies or romance talk about the instant chemistry or whatever, there may be some initial pleasure. There's the excitement of knowing another person. But then in this phase, there is if not pain, there's at least discomfort. But after that, so this may be the first stage, this may be the second stage. Then after that, when we humanize, then there is trust, and then there is stability. So overall, when we come to this level, that's when the relationship can go steadily for a long time. Now, when there is this phase where the initial poison phase is there, or whenever that poison phase comes, then being able to endure that is the test. So, with this background, let's now look at one of the key decisions that has to be done in the Ramayana in terms of whether a relationship is to be continued or whether it is to be discontinued. So, Ravan is incited by Shurpanakha and then he decides to go and abduct Sita. And he abducts her and he comes back. And he thinks he has been spectacularly victorious. For him, his plan seems to work perfectly. When Maricha first takes Ram away and then Lakshman goes, Sita sends Lakshman away. Now, he had not, he had anticipated that Maricha's call will take Lakshman away. But he saw Sita yelling at, chastising, accusing. He did not really hear what was going on, but he could see. It was not a pleasant interaction. Sometimes you come into a room and there are two people, they were sitting in the same room, but it's like you can feel the tension in the room. It's like sometimes the tension in the room is such that the room feels like sometimes it's very cold. You can just move your hand, you can feel some snow or ice or mist. And then you can cut through the tension practically. So he could see something was wrong. And then she goes away. She sends Lakshman away and then he manages to abduct her. Now Jatayu comes as an inconvenience, but he deals with Jatayu. And he goes off victoriously. And the one hitch in his plan is that he's not able to get Sita to voluntarily give herself to him. And he's just waiting and waiting and waiting, trying to threaten her, trying to tempt her. And he gives her 1 year. He says, I am going to enjoy you. Either I will, either you will satisfy my carnal desire or you will satisfy my carnivorous desire. What does carnivorous desire mean? He said, he's a Rakshasa. So he said, I will have my demon cooks cook you and I'll eat you for my breakfast. So he gives her a 1 year ultimatum. And then things start spiraling downward for him. Hanuman comes over there. He doesn't do anything. This is just a pesky monkey. And that pesky monkey burns nearly half of his city. And the same thing which he had considered to be utterly impregnable, that city, Ravan had conquered the whole universe. He could have taken over even the Swarga if he had wanted to. But he had chosen Lanka because it is surrounded by the oceans. And he felt that because it is surrounded by oceans, it's safe. It's very difficult to attack. Hmm. That's one of the reasons why America rose to superpower status so fast. That America is just 200-year-old country. But geographically, it is very blessed. It has relatively placid neighbors on both sides, Mexico and Canada. It's surrounded by oceans. So it's difficult to attack it. Of course, immigration is a threat over there. But that's different from downright aggression or invasion. But the thing is, he had chosen that place. He had considered this impregnable. And then not only had it been penetrated, but it had also been devastated. And that's when he called an emergency council of his ministers. And then he presented it. He said that this is a grave danger that has come upon us. And what should we do? And he says, a king who takes unilateral decisions without consulting his ministers will be destroyed. Therefore, a wise king always consults his ministers. Now he speaks this, but it is, some people say, some bosses, they say, feel free to express your opinion as long as you agree with me. So it's like the freedom that is given with one hand is taken away with the other hand. So he says, give your advice, but what happens? Everybody knows what he wants to do. And he has surrounded himself by powerful people, but they are all his yes men. And one by one, all the demons, they start saying, he just, Hanuman, he's just a monkey. But he caught us by surprise. Next time, if they attack us, it is we who will give them a nasty surprise. Some other demon says, while he is still fleeing through the airways, we should chase and we'll attack him and we'll destroy him right now. Some say that let's go to find out where Ram is and we'll kill him over there itself. So all of them give counsel of war. Now there are two dissident voices. And dissident means those who oppose. And it's interesting, those voices are Vibhishana and Kumbhakarna. But interestingly, both of them go in different directions. Kumbhakarna says that, oh brother, he said, why are you consulting us now? Did you consult us before you chose to abduct Sita? You made a rash decision driven by lust. And now there's a great danger that has come to our entire kingdom because of your rashness. Now, Ravana is not used to being spoken like this in his own kingdom. But then, Kumbhakarna was extremely powerful. And generally, whenever there are powerful people, they always want to get a wedge in. They want to remind others how powerful I am. So Kumbhakarna adds a twist in the tale. He says, but it is your good fortune that you have a brother like me. Or whatever consequences come out of your rashness, I will deal with them. And I will destroy Ram's army whenever it comes here. Ravan is outraged. He swallows his anger down and he thanks his brother for his support. And then on the other side, Vibhishan says, oh brother, a king should always be thoughtful about the bigger picture and the bigger consequences of his actions. While many have counseled you for war, the reality is that there are three ominous signs. This first, Ram does not seem to be any ordinary warrior. He single handedly destroyed your entire regiment at Janastan. 14,000 warriors, including her Dushan and Trishira. Then just one of his servants came into our kingdom and destroyed your garden. The garden was known as Ashokavatika. When Hanuman destroyed it that was Hanuman, Ravan's favorite garden. It was known as Ashokavatika, it became Shokvatika for it. So, came and destroyed your garden and killed the best of your warriors. Till Indrajit had to use the Brahmastra to stop him, to arrest him. And yet, he seemed to escape even through the Brahmastra. And then, he burnt in front of your own eyes half of our city. I said, the third thing is, oh brother, you are not invincible to humans and monkeys. And these are the enemies that have come here. So I exhort you, please return Sita immediately to Ram and protect our dynasty from destruction. So these are courageous words. It is easy to speak our opinion when there is no risk in speaking our opinion. But it's like some people, they can very strongly criticize the politics of another country. But their own country's politics, they will not speak one word. Because today they may be opposed to, today one party might be power and they want support from that party, and tomorrow they want another party in power, they want support from that party. So it requires courage to speak when it is our own future that will be at risk. Now, when Vibhishan speaks these words, at this point, Ravan becomes pensive. And Ravan adjourns the meeting. He said, we'll meet tomorrow morning, and tomorrow I'll make a decision. So Vibhishan feels some hope at that time. And then the next morning, before the assembly begins, Vibhishan goes to the palace of Ravan to meet him and to try to persuade him. And while Vibhishan's words had given Ravan some food for thought, had led him to some second thoughts, but something had happened during the night. Ravan was by nature a lusty creature. And ever since he had seen Sita and had become infatuated with her, none of his queens or maids could satisfy him anymore. And he had spent one more night craving for her, and that unsated desire had destroyed his intelligence. Krishna says, Avrutam Jnanam Etena. That when desire becomes very strong, it covers our knowledge. And as soon as Vibhishan saw Ravan's face, he realized that Ravana's disposition has changed. Whereas the previous night, the previous evening, Ravan was thoughtful. Now he seemed more scornful, resentful. The emotion had changed. So Vibhishan said, "Oh, my dear brother, I've come to beg you. We are the royalty. We have a duty to the entire kingdom and all the citizens here. Please do not bring upon our entire kingdom destruction for the sake of." Now, here, the language he uses might seem a little objectionable. He doesn't say, he says, for the sake of one woman. Now, it is his own. Now, she is not responsible. It is his desire that is responsible. In Greek mythology, there is the story of of a princess called Helen of Troy. And they said that she was so beautiful that seeing her, they said the face that launched 1,000 ships and discharged 1,000,000 arrows. So war started to get her. So what happens is he says, this. Ravan just turns his head away and doesn't listen to him. And then finally, when they again meet in the assembly, Vibhishan decides to make one last ditch effort. He takes out his crown, puts it at the feet of Ravan, and he says, please, my brother, do not bring about the destruction of our dynasty. At that time, Ravan disdainfully knocks off the crown of Vibhishan, and Vibhishan decides to depart from there. Now, when he goes, four of his trusted assistants go with him. And then he has three options. He says, there are three things I can do right now. He says that either I can lead a coup against my brother. Internally, I can create a revolt and overthrow him. And then hand Sita over to Ram. So in Syria right now, there was a dictator and he was overthrown by some rebel forces. They've got power. These kind of things keep happening. And he says, however, the number of supporters I have are very few. And the aura of fear that Ravan has created is so great that any internal rebellion against him is unlikely to succeed. The second is, he said, I can just retire to the Himalayas. He says, I say that I don't want to be part of this, and therefore I will depart. However, that will be irresponsible to the citizens who have respected me and treated me as their royalty, as a member of the royal family. And he was not the king, but still he was thinking like a king. Not in the sense of wanting privilege and power, but having concern and compassion for the citizens. And he says, the third option is defection. Now, defection, this has nothing to do with defect. To think it has something to do with defect is a defect. Defection means going to the other side. When two armies are fighting, one person defects from one side to the other side. That means he said, I can go over to the side of Ram and assure him that his enmity is not with the Rakshasa dynasty. His enmity is with a particular Rakshasa and those who support him. Now, there are many who support him, but even among the demons, not everybody was a warrior. There were also citizens. There are many of them were warriors, but not everybody was a warrior. Generally, the Devtas and Asuras, both of them are considered to be Kshatriyas. So, of course, Brahma is more of a Vaishnava, but Indra is a Kshatriya, and Asuras also Kshatriyas. But even among Kshatriyas, not all Kshatriyas are warriors. There are Kshatriyas who are more administrators than warriors. And of course, in every country there are civilians. So he said that we don't want the entire country to be destroyed, entire dynasty to be destroyed because of the actions of one person, because of the attachment and the unwise decision of one person. And finally, he says, this is the only option that is working. And then now we have analyzed this more from an ethical perspective. The same thing can also be analyzed from a more devotional perspective. The epics, I won't go into all of this in detail, the epics can be understood at four different levels. We can look at them at a literal level where they are stories and we can be entertained by those stories. We can look at them at an ethical level where we learn, understand the rationale for the decisions and the choices made by the characters. And based on that, we can learn how we should make decisions. Then they can be seen at allegorical level, where we see some symbolisms behind it. So, for example, Ravan is a person, but Ravan also represents a mentality of lust. And then we can see them at a devotional level. At a devotional level, it's a Leela of the Lord. And everything is an arrangement of the Lord for the reciprocation of love between him and his devotees. So at a devotion, so we are focusing on the ethical level. At the devotional level, Vibhishan goes to Ram because Ram is the Lord. And surrendering to the Lord is the ultimate wise thing to do. But the Ramayana, at least the Valmiki Ramayana itself, does not focus on that reasoning. Later retellings of the Ramayana do talk about that reasoning. But here the focus is on he is a responsible member of the royal dynasty and he makes a carefully considered decision. So when he goes over, many people think that Vibhishan was a Bhratradrohi, that he betrayed his own brother. On the other hand, Kumbhakarna stayed on with his brother, even till the moment of his death. So now there are different levels at which, or different perspectives from which a particular action can be seen. So if we consider that they are a family, so we have Ravan, Vibhishan, and Kumbhakarna. And Vibhishan goes out. Then we can say that he is a betrayer. He's a betrayer of the family. But if we consider this family is meant to protect the country, the royal family is meant to protect the country. And Ravan, instead of protecting his country and his citizens, has put all of them in danger for the sake of his own selfish desire. Then we would consider that to be outrageous, isn't it? Now there are so many wars happening across the world, and generally, the wars sometimes start with some genuine grievances of some people, but eventually it just becomes political calculations, and it all becomes mostly driven by desire for money and power, those things. But if a king launches a war in today's world, one head of state launches a whole war against another country just because he's attracted to the queen of the other country. This is shameless, isn't it? Just for your own desire, you're ready to send to the death's path thousands and millions of people. So, from the bigger perspective, it was Ravan who betrayed his country. It was Ravan who did the opposite of what he was expected to do. Instead of being protector of the country for his own desire, he endangered his country. So a betraying a betrayer is not betrayal. So, did Vibhishan betray Ravan? Yes. But that's only the small picture. It's like, suppose, if we have a video recording where you see one person punches the other person, and you see that one person punching the other person, and then this is a violent person. This person punches the other person, this person should be arrested, this person should be punished. But that video has been clipped. Now, before this person punched the other person, no, maybe that person has insulted the first person, that person has insulted, that person has spit on the other person, that person had tried to hit the other person. Like that part of the video is conveniently cut off. Then what happens? It is evidence that is distorted. So, selective vision is often deceptive vision. When something is given selectively, it is often deceptive. So, yes, from a small picture, Vibhishan betrayed Ravan. But from a bigger picture, it was actually he stayed faithful to the bigger cause that he was meant to be responsible for. That bigger cause was the protection of his kingdom, the protection of the citizens. So now, what does this mean for all of us? We may not be in relationships where something like this is at stake. The entire kingdom's fate is at stake, or whether a person is ready to throw away everything just for some small desire. But in general, this principle of Vibhishan, to use contemporary language, recognized that his relationship with Ravan had become toxic, and therefore he had to put an end to it. So, what does it mean? When does a relationship become toxic? Basically, a toxic relationship means that, as I said, ideal good relationship is where both people rise upward. But sometimes what happens is, in a relationship, one person is going downward, and in trying to pull that other person up, what happens? The other person also starts going down. So when we try to help someone and helping that person, we are not helping them. Actually, they are going down, and we are also being dragged down. Say, for example, somebody is an alcoholic, and now if somebody in the family has that issue, they need to be helped. Naturally, it is important for us to help those who are in trouble. However, that help will have to come in different forms at different times. Sometimes, if say maybe we have a young kid who's just become a teenager, has got a driving license, and they're driven drunk and has got into trouble. Then we may say, no, we may go to the police and beg them, request them, pay the bail money, whatever, and make sure that our kid doesn't get in trouble, doesn't have to go to jail. There's no black mark on his record, whatever. And it's a matter of responsibility, it's a matter of love. So love can come in two different ways. One is to protect others from the consequences of their actions. So if somebody has done something wrong, then we protect them from the consequences of their actions. Okay, you got in trouble, but I will get you out of that. And this is required. In one sense, when we form a relationship, to some extent, if not at a subtle level, at least at a functional level, we share each other's karma. That even if, say, I have eaten some food which is inappropriate and my health got spoiled. Now, you didn't eat that food, but if my health gets spoiled, uh, then you take me to the hospital. That you had not planned that. You did not do that, but even if I had done it, I had to do it. If tomorrow you fall sick, and that's because of something you ate, I'll have to take care. I'll take care. So basically, sometimes some people do wrong things, and then protecting them from the consequences of their actions is a sign of love. But if this goes on, if somebody's an alcoholic, one day they drink and they're caught and we save them. Again, they do the same thing. Third, they do the same thing. And each time they do it worse and worse and worse. Then eventually there comes a time when, when we stop protecting them. And that is the sign of love. We may have to stop protecting them. If we don't do that, then they will keep harming themselves and they may even harm others. Now, I was in Delaware in America, and this program, most of our centers in America have mostly Indians. Not a good number of Westerns also come, but not a large number. So there was this Western person who was there for my class. And he seemed elderly, 55, 60, maybe 65, something like that. A little elderly. And then he had a very small daughter, a small girl with him, like 5.5 years old. So then, and there was nobody else in the family. The two had come for the talk, and after that, he came and asked me some questions. And then we started talking, and he started saying that, you know, he said, she's my granddaughter. And he said that in the West, there are many times when people are, she said, my daughter was a single mother. And he said that she got into drugs. And he said, I tried to help her. She was on her own, and because of drugs she got into trouble, and because she had a baby, so then I told her that you come and stay with me, and then she was staying with us. At that time, she promised that she would get clean, she would give up all the drugs, but then one day she just disappeared, and then we found a major part of her life savings that we had kept in our safe. She had stolen that and gone away, and she took our granddaughter with her. And she said after 6 months she came back and she was basically like a shadow of herself. She was completely emaciated. Drugs had almost destroyed her body. And we could see that her granddaughter was also completely neglected. And then she said, she apologized to them. She said, I'm sorry, I'm sorry. He said, please help me. So he said, we said, we are not going to let you stay in our home. Let's let the granddaughter stay with us. No, he said, no, she said, no, I want my daughter with me. So she got a separate house nearby and she was staying there. And then he said something happened. She just got stoned on drugs, and somehow what happened was that the house caught fire. And the house caught fire, and she was so much on drugs she didn't even realize it. So then he said, we noticed it. We ran in, we risked our lives and pulled both of them out, and we saved our granddaughter. That time we decided that we have to fight for custody for our daughter. And he said that time for our granddaughter. He said, our granddaughter hated us for doing that. Yes, we told her we don't want to take your daughter away from you, but if you want her back, you have to go into a treatment center. And she said, "No, I'm all right. I'll take care of her." She just snorted into this. That was the most painful period of my life. So that caused me more pain. He was telling me then, even when my daughter stole my life saving and went away, that didn't cause me as much pain as when my daughter was treating me like her enemy, like I was her enemy. But he said now she's in a treatment center and we visit her once a month and she's slowly recovering. So this was what 3 years ago. Then I went again next year and he said his daughter had also come. She said that she is now off drugs, at least temporarily. And then she gets to see her daughter. So he said so he had also In this time, he said he started coming to the temple, he started chanting Hare Krishna. He said, I told my daughter also to start chanting. So we felt that this helped us to an extent. So I'm not going to do the chanting part over here. This is my focus is not how this is like a magical savior story. My point here is that sometimes allow means to stop protecting others from the consequences of their actions. Why? Because they may keep doing worse and worse actions, which will end up hurting others even more. So what happens is, in this case, Kumbhakarna's protection was, Kumbhakarna said his love, his faithfulness to his brother was, you made a mistake, but you are fortunate you have a brother like me who will deal with the consequence of the mistake. Vibhishan's love was that this was not an accidental mistake. Now, if somebody just out of carelessness drives too fast and gets arrested, and they learn a lesson, then that's fair enough. So when there are mistakes, sometimes the mistakes can be circumstantial or accidental. Circumstantial means what? There is a bad situation that comes up and somebody gets tempted or somebody gets pressured to do something. But there are wrongs that are intentional. Intentionally, the person understands what they are doing. So, so when now Ravan, when he abducted Sita, at that particular point, was it circumstantial or intentional? That time only it was intentional. Because it was not that, say, Ravan was just wandering around and he saw Sita and he was attracted to her and he grabbed her. That's also terrible. But that you could say was, okay, that is a circumstance. But he made a cold blooded plan by which he sidelined her protectors and then he abducted her. And not only that, after that, even when he saw the demonstration of the power of Hanuman, he was given reasons for being cautious. He didn't listen. So that means what happens is, see, all of us have, the last point to conclude this, we all of us have conditionings. And our conditionings can make us, sometimes they can impel us to wrong actions. And we may all do things that we are not proud of because of our conditions. However, there's a huge difference between these two kind of people. One is those who fight against their conditionings. That means that they understand that this is bad, they accept this is bad, and they try to fight against it, and then they get whatever support is required to fight against it. But the other is those who fight for their conditions. So everybody, for example, may have lust. At one level, the male female attraction is a biological principle. But even if we feel inappropriately attracted to someone outside the boundaries of dharma, we fight against that attraction. We fight against the condition. But on the other hand, if somebody feels an attraction and they start developing an illicit relationship and they're fighting not to curb the conditioning, they're fighting for the condition. I want to do this and I want to cover it up so that nobody comes to know about it. So if something like that is happening, then that's not circumstantial. So if somebody is fighting for their conditioning, so in general, if somebody is fighting against their conditioning, that is the time we need to support them. That is the time when we protect them from the consequences of their action. But when they are fighting for their conditionings, at that time we need to distance ourselves. So everybody may have a temper. Now, sometimes when we get angry, we may speak or things that we speak or do things that we later regret. But there are some people who, instead of rectifying their anger, start justifying their anger. When they start justifying their anger, I was at one place when I was traveling, the small extension center in one country, and everyone there was very much afraid of the leader. And the people, the community told me that, the leader chastises us publicly, he humiliates us. We're all afraid of it. And then some of the leader and I had a good relationship, so I talked with him. And he said, I told him, Prabhu, it seems that people are afraid that you publicly chastise them. He said, yes. If only they would listen to me, I wouldn't have to do that. Now, the point is that we can't just force people to listen to us. We have to persuade them. When Krishna did not just force Arjuna to listen to him. No, Krishna persuaded Arjuna. That persuasion is the Bhagavad Gita. So, because you're not listening to me, that's why I'm yelling at you. Well, okay. Once in a while, when there's some big danger, that's okay. If I told a child, don't play in the middle of the road, and the child is playing in the middle of the road, say, get out that road immediately. It's maybe a matter of life or death. You do that. But if that becomes habitual, then that's not a healthy way of functioning in the relationship. So other people may be behaving in unpleasant ways. But when we start justifying our anger, and especially the justifying becomes dangerous when there is, many of you heard this word gaslighting. Gaslighting means, that person does something wrong, but when we confront them, they just distort the whole story so that as if we have only done something wrong. And then they make us feel guilty. So then when that happens, when somebody is fighting for their conditionings instead of fighting against their conditionings, then that is the time, if we are protecting them, then they are going down, and protecting them, we will be dragged down. So Ravan was not so much abandoned by Vibhishan as Ravan abandoned the principles of a Kshatriya. And then Vibhishan decided the only way I can remain a Kshatriya, I can remain a true protector of my citizens, is by distancing myself from Ravan. Now, this was not an easy decision for him. Later on, when there is a conflict in the war, there's a meeting between Ravan and Vibhishan. Sorry, first there's a meeting between Kumbhakarna and Vibhishan. And it's a painful meeting. Kumbhakarna confronts Vibhishan and says, how could you abandon your entire family like this? And then there's a meeting with Vibhishan and Ravan also. So there is that unpleasant, painful situation. But it is for the great. Uh, when Ravan, when Vibhishan does this, it is a very carefully calculated decision. He has made every effort possible. And when he has distanced himself, as I started by saying, it's not simply based on emotions, it's based on careful consideration. So sometimes it may be in our social circles, in our extended family circles, in sometimes our professional circles. There are some people, whether those people, I started by saying, when does a relationship become toxic? It's not for us to label people as toxic. They may be. But maybe they are that way only with us. And maybe with others they're quite different. So, but we need to evaluate if in a particular relationship that when they are going down and they are dragging us down, then we need to create a distance. Now, what does that distance mean? How that has to be done? That will vary from person to person. In the Mahabharata, Vidura did something different from what Vibhishan did. Vibhishan went over to the side of Ram. Vidura did not go over to the side of the Pandavas. Why? Because in that case, Vidura still had hope. See, in one sense, Dhritarashtra and Duryodhana, both of them are villains. But Dhritarashtra is more like the passive villain, and Duryodhan more like the active villain. So, in one sense, what happened was it was Duryodhan who was going down and he was dragging Dhritarashtra down. So, when Vidura went away, Vidura saw that he's not able to help. Vidura broke that relationship with us and then he went away. So, Vidura still had hope that Dhritarashtra could be redeemed, that Dhritarashtra could be saved. It was his attachment to Duryodhana that was the problem. So it was, you could say he was fighting for his conditionings, but you could say it was more that he was fighting for his son's conditionings rather than his own conditionings. So, and that's why what Vidura did was he didn't go over to the side of the Pandavas. If he had gone over to the side of the Pandavas, then because of Dhritarashtra's attachment to Duryodhan, he would have considered Vidura also to be an enemy. You were a part of the people who killed my son. And then he would never have been able to listen to Vidura. So Vidura, among the three options we discussed, what is the doing a rebellion, a coup, retirement, and defection. So which one did Vidura choose? Retirement. It's more like a pilgrimage. He went on a forest pilgrimage to enrich himself with wisdom. And then after Duryodhana had been killed, he came back. And then when he spoke to Dhritarashtra, his words had impact. So when the relationship has turned toxic, that does not mean we have to permanently reject the relationship. That doesn't necessarily mean that that person is irreformably bad. But the point is that if that person is pulling us down, then for our own safety and sanity, we will need to create a proper distance in that relationship. And by that, so what we by that we can keep ourselves safe and sane. And then eventually, if that person recognizes that what they have done is terrible, that what they have done is leading them to terrible things, or at least they become open to hear that, then we may be able to reconnect with them. So, in this way, when relationships become toxic, the important point is not bitterness. That we don't want to act based on feelings of being bitter. We want to focus on what can make us better and what can hopefully help the other person to become better. So when we act based on that criteria, then we will be able to act more thoughtfully and not be driven simply by emotions. So I'll summarize what we discussed today. Mainly, we discussed 4 points. Our theme was about when relationships turn toxic, what to do. So I started by talking about when we are constantly evaluating. We are evaluating our decisions, our actions, our choices. So when we are evaluating relationships, if it's unconsciously done, then it will mostly be done based on our emotions. That is, we may have our likes and our dislikes. And these are fickle. So evaluating the status of a relationship simply based on how I feel is not a very healthy parameter. So we evaluate based on two parameters. What are the two parameters? Anyone remembers? A good relationship, it helps us come closer and go higher, become better. Go higher or become better. So if these two are happening, then that's a good relationship. If the opposite is happening, then that's an unhealthy relationship. Then I discussed about the whole dynamic of Ravan, Kumbhakarna, and Vibhishan. So Kumbhakarna said that I protect Ravan from the consequences of his actions. Now, whether he could protect or not, that's a different question. But that was his idea of being faithful. And there is some truth to that. Now, Vibhishan, he won. And when he was rejected, then he carefully calculated. He decided that a rebellion or renunciation, neither of those were suitable for him. So, therefore, he did reorientation. He oriented himself to the side of Ram. Did he betray? No, it was he betrayed a person who was a betrayer, and that was actually non-betrayal in that sense. He was faithful to the dynasty, faithful to the duty of being a citizen and a king. And then the last part we discussed was about when when do we decide that something is where the relationship has become toxic. It is when the other person is going down, and then in being bonded with them we also start going down. So when that starts happening, and combine the last 2 points. So when is this happening? Because in any relationship, the other person is falling, and we try to pick them up. We try to hold them. Now, in holding them, we may also go down. So does that mean we abandon them? We have to see what they are fighting for. Fighting for their conditionings, or they're fighting against the conditionings. So if they're fighting against the conditionings, then we will need to support them. Like somebody is falling and they also don't want to fall, they want to rise. And then we try to hold them, we can help them rise. But if they're falling and they want to fall, and when we hold on to them, what is happening? We'll also fall with them, isn't it? So if they're fighting for their conditionings, then we have to create a distance with them. Now, exactly how that distance will be created, we discussed that with Vibhishan did differently and Vidura did differently. So it's not just a breaking the relationship, but we create a distance, not because simply because we are bitter with what they are. That feelings of bitter might be there, but we focus on what will make things better. What will first of all help us to stay in a better situation, and hopefully, when they become more open, we can help them to become better. Thank you very much. Hare Krishna. Are there any questions or comments? Person who breaks the ice will get a special prize. Hare Krishna Prabhu. Wonderful class. Can I ask you a question? You already asked one. The next question. Prabhu, Kumbhakarna did with emotions and Vibhishan did rationally. So in our day-to-day life or normal relationships, is like-minded people having better relationships or the opposite work together or all okay. Right? Which one do you think work in the longer run? Or where do we need more efforts to build a better and a closer relationship? Okay. So was Vibhishan acting only on one, sorry, Kumbhakarna acting only on emotions? Well, he also had a bit of calculation. I want to show that Ravan, I am going to protect Ravan. So it was his ego was also there. But in one sense, he was blinded over there. So that's a side detail. But my understanding from what I have observed is that relationships are a mystery. It's like I've seen when I've traveled across the world, I see two people, I can't see anything similar among them. Actually, they are the best of friends. And sometimes two people are so similar, and that similarity becomes the cause of jealousy among them, becomes the cause of envy among them. So it's difficult to say. So there are, it's like sometimes we say relationships work, and sometimes relationships require work. So, so now the thing is that it's wonderful if sometimes with some people we just click, but even with the people who we click, even like-minded people are not alike. They're not identical. There'll still be differences. So basically, slightly bigger subject, but I'll quickly make this point that we all may have different opinions. or we may the differences can be at three levels. Differences can be with respect to opinions or decisions. Hmm? So, say one parent might be a little more, if two parents are they're taking care of a child, one parent might be a little strict, the other person might be a little liberal. But don't suffocate the child so much. So now this could be two different ways of functioning. If we have a budget for a vacation, we can only go to one place. One person may say I want to go here, another person might want to go there. These kind of differences, they are just inevitable in life. Now these can arise from different ways of reasoning. That are different. So I understand why you arrived at this conclusion. Because see, when you can take the same set of facts. Sometimes people say that science is based on facts and religion is based on faith. It's an oversimplification. The science has so many facts. Now, which of the facts are you going to focus on? And how do you bring the picture based on that? So sometimes what happens is, there will be 10 facts and I may consider these 6 facts more important, and based on that I may make a decision. And you may consider the other 4 facts to be more important and you may make a different decision. But sometimes our reasonings may be different. And those can also come from our values. So somebody might have been raised by a very strict parent. Somebody might have been raised by a little more lenient parent. We all have backgrounds. So these are also tolerable. But most serious differences are over motives. Motives means if one person starts suspecting that the other person's motive is itself not good, then what happens is then things just don't work. Say in a company, say the two managers are working together, and one says let's do the project this way, another says do this project that way. Both of them can have differences of opinion, and sometimes very difficult to know what is right. But if one of the managers starts thinking you are not really interested in this company at all, you are simply treating this company as a launching pad for going to some other company. And right now, what you are doing is to try to bankrupt this company so that you can go into that company. When the motives are suspected, then trust is destroyed. So, ideally speaking, the relationship should not come to the level where the motives get questioned. As long as we trust that both the people involved who have differences of opinion, both want the same thing. And then the subsequent things can be dealt with. So ideally speaking, I would say that motives have to be similar. To some extent, the values, if they are similar, also that is helpful. Now, the remaining things, the way people think, if these are dissimilar, that is okay. So when people say that sometimes unlike people attract each other, sometimes we say birds of a feather flock together. So which is true? It depends on which attributes are emphasized at a particular time. So sometimes when we know that other person also thinks like us, we will feel comfortable in that person's presence and we can just relax. But sometimes when we say this person thinks in a different way, that may stimulate our curiosity. And then that may also be positive. So it's like in any relationship, I'll conclude this point. Any relationship, like a living relationship, when you say, there's life in that relationship. Then what happens? There was this American comedian. He said once that my wife and I, we enter into our home through different doors. We cook our food in different kitchens. We take our meals on different tables. We watch different TVs. We live in different rooms. We are doing everything possible to keep our marriage together. There is no marriage there at all. So now sometimes a relationship may be like it is just for namesake, it is alive, it's dead. So in a living relationship, there is a need for a combination of predictability and unpredictability. If everything is predictable, then the relationship almost becomes mechanical. Mechanical means, like in a machine, it's programmed as if I press this button, this is going to be the response. If I press this button, this is going to be the response. So if the other person is completely predictable for us, then we feel as if I'm living with a machine, isn't it? So it is mechanical, it can become very boring. On the other hand, if everything is unpredictable, then then it can be very disorienting. It can lead to a lot of insecurity. Like what word I speak is going to trigger this person. What may I do and this person start yelling at me, or this person will become depressed, or this person will. We just don't know it. So what happens is there has to be a combination of both. So a certain level of predictability, it brings stability in the relationship. And a certain level of unpredictability, it keeps the novelty in the relationship. It keeps the excitement in the relationship. And now different people some people may want the stability more in the relationship, some people may want the more novelty more in the relationship. So then that mutual understanding has to be there. So when you say birds of a feather flock together, that is where if somebody is talking more about the stability in the relationship. Is predictability more rational and unpredictable more emotional? No, some people can be predictably emotional. Isn't it? No, we know that for some people some things are very important, and if they get this news, they're going to get upset about this. So I won't say it's that simple. Its unpredictability can also be because that person has some interest that we don't know about. Maybe in their background something was there. They have learned some skills, or they had some ability that we don't know about. So unpredictability can be about various things. Thank you. Very much. Very much. Yes, please. Anybody else? Yes, yes, yes. Generally do take things selectively so that this it comes to a point where our actions are justified. In relationships also sometimes, especially when we are dealing with devotees, we hear a class and we arrive at a point where our actions and those dealings are justified. We take quotes from Shastra. So our actions are justified and factors. How do we understand that whatever conclusion we have arrived at is not out of ego, but for the betterment of relationship and for betterment of ourselves and the other person? Okay, so when we hear a class or when we interact with others, we are often selective in what we focus on. And when we are selecting, how do we know that we are not doing it just to justify what we are doing? Well, selection is just unavoidable. None of us can remember everything that we hear. What to speak of hear? I don't remember all the things that I speak. What to speak of somebody hearing? And even if we remember also, we can't apply everything that we hear. We will have to select some things. New Year is coming. Last year, I was there. One devotee came to me, Prabhu, this New Year is going to be dramatically different for me. What happened? He said, I have made 1,008 resolutions. I said, with all due respect, whenever somebody says with all due respect, that means whatever they're going to speak is not very respectful after that. So I said, with all due respect, it's a list of 1,008, that's not resolution, that is a wish list. Isn't it? Nobody can implement 1,008 in this. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Beyond that, it just becomes difficult. So we can only implement a few things. We can implement many things over a period of years. But at one time, we cannot be working on too many things at the same time. So in that sense, selection is just unavoidable. So now, when we are doing the selection, it could be because of prioritization. Now, this is what is important. this is what I am working on, or this is what the state that I am going through in my life right now, then this resonates. Hmm? That can be because of prioritization. The prioritization can be because of various reasons. Now, it could, that's one extreme. The other, it could be, as you said, it could be for justification. That I hear something by which I can prove my point. So, in general, the difference in selection is that when it's prioritization, the focus is on improving. Hmm? When justification, the focus is on proving. So it's proving or improving. So now sometimes we may want someone to get off our case. So this is the way I am. Maybe this is not the best situation, but this is not the battle I want to fight right now. This is not what I'm going to work on at this stage in my life. That's okay. We decide I'll work on this later. This is what I'm working on right now. So it's if we are deciding, okay, this is an important issue, but I'll work on it later. And I don't think that's something wrong. But if we are doing something which according to Shastra or according to the general understanding of respected devotees, is something questionable. And then we find an isolated quote to support that, then that's something which is likely to be justification. So the, the scripture is such that you can find support for whatever you want in scripture. That's the meaning of it being kalpavruksha, desire fulfilling three. So it can even fulfill my desire to prove the non-existence of God. So in Rig Veda, there's a section where it says, is there one God? Are there many gods? Is there no God? Who knows? And that is basically a sage in the stage of Jigyasa, a seeker in the stage of Jigyasa, contemplating the nature of reality. That's not the conclusion of the Vedas. That is one statement in the Vedas. Some people use that to say that actually Hinduism is compatible with atheism also. Mm. So now that is stretching things a bit too far. Hinduism doesn't condemn atheists. Somebody says I'm a Hindu atheist. That is quite. It's like saying I'm a honest robber. So it's an inherent contradiction over there. Any last question? Yesterday, while discussing in the home, one of the statements about that Prabhupada created a spiritual world in this material world, and we devotees are creating multiple material worlds in this Prabhupada spiritual world. At one stage, sometimes if it is more inclined about the materialistic, it will spoil the relationship, whether in the family or within the devotees. What is your advice? Provide such. Yeah, so sometimes within the spiritual world which Prabhupada has created, because of our materialistic motives, we may create splits or conflicts. Well, no, but there's this saying that Prabhupada created a world in which a house in which the whole world can live. So we can have different opinions. So one of my friends, he says, Prabhupada built a house in which the whole world can fight. What he meant by that is that sometimes family members also fight. But even they fight, that doesn't mean they leave the family and go. This Prabhupada's house is big enough that there can be people with different opinions. And those different opinions can also have space. It is the International Society for Krishna Consciousness. That is the priority. Krishna consciousness. It is not the International Society for Book Distribution. It is not the International Society for Temple Construction. It is not the International Society for Varnashram. It is not the International Society for Cow Protection. It is not the International Society for Patriarchy. It is not the International Society for Gurukul establishment. Now, all these things can be done. They can be very important. in their own place. But the problem comes that if somebody says, this is the only way to follow Srila Prabhupada, and if you are not doing this, then you are not following Prabhupada, then it becomes a cause of not just like what I said earlier, different priorities or different reasonings, different values also. But it becomes, it becomes a question of motives. You are not doing this because you're not faithful to Prabhupada. So sometimes as devotees, we put the label deviant or unfaithful. We do it very cheaply and uh, very uncautious, imprudently. So if that happens, then it leads to a very difficult phase in the relationship. Because if someone devotee is accusing the core integrity of another devotee, then it becomes difficult for those devotees to maintain a relationship. So now this does not mean that there can be unlimited space, and there have to be some non-negotiable boundaries. So for example, we can have in our Govindas, our restaurant, we may have Chinese food and we can have Italian food and all those. But he says that, oh, we will have meat also over there. No, that is a non-negotiable. So there are certain non-negotiables. So that's why I am a little uncomfortable with the word materialistic. Because what happens is the things which we like to do, we call them spiritual. The things we dislike, we call them we are materialistic. So it becomes this nomenclature becomes very self-serving. So is Varnashram material spiritual, and say is building a Govindas, is it materialistic? You may say Govindas is maybe a five-star hotel. Varnashram may be like a simple farm community where protecting cows. Now, is one more spiritual than our own material? It depends. It may not be. It can be, it need not be. So it's very difficult for us to know what are the motives of others. And sometimes we may have to come to a particular conclusion about people's motives if they are doing the same thing again and again. And as I said, they're fighting for their own justification for conditionings or whatever. But generally, we give people the benefit of the doubt, and we understand that say, Srila Prabhupada has created a huge umbrella, and within that, we all may pick up some smaller umbrellas. So, for example, somebody may pick up the umbrella of book distribution. Somebody may pick up the umbrella of temple construction. Somebody may pick up the umbrella of kirtan. Somebody may pick up the umbrella of shastric education, like a Bhakti Shastri Bhakti Vaibhav. Somebody may pick up the umbrella of deity worship. So, like that, we may all have different umbrellas which we may pick up. So, these are differences in values, but the motive is the same. Prabhupada's umbrella is the International Society for Krishna Consciousness. Now, if somebody picks up the umbrella of, say, we have non-veg food, now that doesn't fit over here. That goes out, isn't it? So there will be some boundaries. But equating, if somebody says, oh, okay, Kirtan alone, Hare Naam Eva Kevalam. So only Kirtan is the important thing, everything is not important. Well, if that were the case, then why did Prabhupada write so many books? Why did Prabhupada build temples? Why did Prabhupada start gurukuls? It's important, but you can't make one thing. So you can find Hare Naam Eva Kevalam as a quote for that, for saying holy name is the only important thing. And then you can also for if you want to study Gita, you can say, that what is Shankaracharya's that quote? Ekam Shastra. So one Shastra is there. You can also say Srimad Bhagavatam is the only Shastra. Yadra Samatrutasya. You can say that. Oh, Mayapur only Dham, which is quoted in Kali. So you can find quotes for anything. Somebody else champion cow protection, they may say, to kill cows is to end human civilization. So we can all find quotes for what we want to do. And that's wonderful. But when we use those quotes, not just for our inspiration to do something, but when we use those quotes as weapons to beat others down, you are being unfaithful, then that's when that becomes a problem. So this relates to your question also. Quotes from scripture they can be used for inspiration or they can be used for weaponization. Weaponization means that we use them to beat others. Inspiration for ourselves that leads to improvement. So weaponization toward others. We make them into weapons to beat others. Then that is what is unhealthy. So thank you very much. Shri Ramachandra Bhagwan ki, Srila Prabhupada ki, Gaur Bhakta Vrinda ki, Pitai Gaur Premanande.
His Grace Chaitanya Charan Prabhu ki.